What role can Rhode Island citizens and students or farmers play in increasing resiliency, both on a community level and on a political level? Maybe Julius.
I mean, I think there's no one answer. I can speak a little bit about some of the things that either that we at the Environmental Justice League are working on or things that we've heard of. But I think the real answer is that we need to do everything and anything, and that the more the better. And I think the more diversity of projects and initiatives and at different levels, at the highest level of government and at the deepest level of the grassroots, need to be happening. And so I think the most, in terms of at that grassroots level, there's many different ways of projects that can fit in under the umbrella of climate change, because climate change affects everything, and there's so many pieces to it. So I won't talk that much about food projects. We have a much better expert on food here on the panel than myself. So I know food things and community gardens and increasing kind of resiliency around that is a major piece of that. But I think there's all kinds of innovative projects that can be done at that small scale level and then scale up. So the one that I wanted to mention that we are working on, one of several others, but we have a project called the Green Drive Eco Bus. So it started just out of a basic need and a reality that within our organization, with our youth programs, we wanted to travel as a group. We had more people that can fit in cars. Trying to get places was always difficult, and in terms of transformational educational experiences, you can watch a movie, you can learn about something, but when you can actually go and experience it, those are the real life-changing moments that affect people over the long term. So we knew we wanted to go to conferences, to events, to experience things firsthand, and we have a lot of people, so how do we get there? So we started looking around, and just by asking and putting the word out through the networks, ended up getting a bus donated to us. So we had this large airport shuttle bus land in our hands, and we're like, this is great, now we can get to places, and just a couple problems. I mean, the first one was I needed to get a new driver's license, and that was a whole process in itself, and figure out how to use this giant piece of machinery. But the other part of the problem with it, and this is how we got into really looking at asthma and issues around diesel emissions and all that, is it's this giant vehicle filled with toxic things that we know all the science behind how it's affecting the communities that we're working in. And yes, public transportation is obviously great. Anytime you can get people driving in one vehicle instead of many smaller ones, that's great. But that still doesn't change the fact that the stuff that comes out of diesel engines is really, really bad for us. And people who live in cities, depending on public transportation, with roads and highways concentrated together, are already impacted by it, have much higher rates of asthma, and being around diesel emissions and fumes of the particulate matter can trigger asthma attacks. So we started working on that. We converted the vehicle to run on waste vegetable oil and locally made biodiesel from Newport Biodiesel, so it comes from the restaurants. It's it's local jobs, local economy, turning a waste product into a resource, all of those things together. It was a learning experience. And it's, I'm not saying it's perfect, there's no one solution that is perfect. There's always things that need to be worked through and drawbacks and all of that, but it's one example of a kind of solution that can work. And then from that, it just kind of grew arms and legs, and now this one vehicle is not just a means for us to get around and get places, but it's an educational vehicle. We installed it with multimedia capabilities. It has a screen, speakers, and we have youth-led workshops around the connection between everything from asthma, environmental racism, diesel air pollution, climate change, food justice, food access, all these things that we can take the learning classroom on the road with us, literally. So we can go to conferences, we can have the workshops right there, we can do public events with it, and we've partnered with all kinds of organizations to use it as literally a vehicle for public outreach and information, not just around environmental issues, but it was used for the AIDS walk. It's been a host for rapid HIV free testing. We partnered with the Urban Pond Procession and used it to create a multimedia interactive exhibit around the history of Mashpog Pond, which was polluted by the Gora manufacturing site. It's one of the big brownfield sites in Providence. And so it's an interactive exhibit with oral histories of people who lived in the neighborhood that we could take to different parks around the neighborhood. And people could really engage directly with it and record their own memories right on it. So we've used it that way, and our new project that we're using it for is where we're partnering with New Urban Farmers in Pawtucket. So they have a large urban farm that is already situated within the Pawtucket Housing Authority's Gallego Courts. So it's this really innovative, amazing project that has so many kids and families from the housing project directly engaging, growing food, reconnecting themselves with the land, with that process, getting nutritious access, access to nutritious food for free, just from growing it, and then not to mention the educational experience. So they've been wanting to get that food out more. They do all the farmers markets, but our next step with it is to run a mobile farmers market. So we're going to be starting, it's going to be a youth-led project. We're looking at alternative economic models, because I also believe that in terms of climate change solutions, the capitalist model that we have is driving this business as usual model is behind it. And unless we have the courage to address that and stand up to the way that we think of success and profit is fundamentally at odds with basic natural laws, unless we can face facts, if we're looking for solutions that fit within capitalism, making it a more green type of capitalism, those are false solutions that are going to create more problems. So we're looking at alternative economic models, economic development models, and we have been recently really interested in this idea of worker-owned cooperatives as an idea to start businesses, small businesses that are owned by the people who work them, and really changing up the models of who makes decisions, how do you not externalize costs in order to maximize your profit, how do you think differently about the business decisions we make. So this is our first step in starting a youth-led, worker-owned cooperative business that can bring fresh food grown in Pawtucket to other housing projects in Pawtucket and Central Falls, bring that food directly to people's doorsteps, directly where they are, bring it to people who are at the gym, people who are out and about doing things in the areas where people already gather, and have it at a lower cost, more affordable, and combine it with public health information, outreach, pamphlets, workshops, cooking demonstrations, all the rest of it. So that's what we're working on now. Shameless plug I just want to throw in is our bus is broken down right now. It had a really rough winter. Fuel injectors got fried. They killed the engine computer system that governs them. So we're running a crowdfunding campaign right now to try to raise money for it. Our minimum goal to get funded is $2,500. We're shooting for $15,000, which would be the full startup costs for doing this mobile farmers market. Right now we're at $1,400, so we're just $1,100 away from meeting that goal. We have about 15 days left to do it, and so for about 40 people giving $25 each, and we'll be there. So if you're interested in that, we have some flyers about the EcoBus there. There's not a link to the crowdfunding site on there, but please come talk to me afterwards. I'll give you a card that has a little short link on the back, and spread the word, tell your family and friends. But that's not the only solution. I think that just because we're doing that, we got this idea from people who are doing this in South Bronx, in Chicago, in cities all over. So it's not our own idea. We're borrowing this and making it our own. But I think that's an example of one type of project. And any group of people who want to get together and have a good idea and want to make it happen, I think that's the kind of thing that really builds resiliency. It's those relationships between people and their neighbors, between people and the land, families figuring out how can a family become more resilient? What are things we can do? And it really needs to be done at that level if it's going to be effective and actually be the kind of strength that we need to maintain